We're going to open the meeting August 20th. Board of Selectmen. Open session public meetings are subject to being videotaped. Your image and voice may be recorded. The first thing on our agenda is public interviews for our 2 highway facility superintendent finalists. And our first appointment is with David Smith. David, would you like to come up?
Sure.
All right.
Hello,
Questions here.
I'm Peg.
David Smith.
Nice to meet you.
Lisa Wysocki.
David Smith.
And I've already lost my questions. We're in good shape.
I have them here.
Jeez.
You don't have them? No.
I don't. Maybe they're in this folder.
No. Sorry. Sorry. Chris kicked me so you can stab me. It's all right.
Really, because I'm showing up.
We're not always this bad.
Really?
Oh, wait. Chris stole them.
There was a stack of them.
She's like that.
Oh my God.
Okay, well,
Not underneath here. No? Oh my goodness, I thought I saw them here too. Sorry about this.
That's no problem.
If you want, you can start, or I can start to.
Yeah, you actually,
Go ahead, we'll just all fold it.
why don't we just, take turns asking the questions, and hopefully by the time it gets to my turn, I'll have some papers.
All right. Tell us why you want to become Berlin's highway and facilities superintendent.
I think it would be a good career move on my part. It's, it's a position that I would be more apt to handle as opposed to what I'm doing currently. I came out of Leominster where I was running basically the highway superintendent's position there, and it was a little overwhelming for me because I needed a little more help, which wasn't supplied. So I left and took a job that isn't challenging enough for me. So I think I need to get back into the hands-on management and running an operation.
Okay.
So the fact that we're a little smaller than Leominster is not a deterrent.
No, it is not.
And
Well, I guess that's kind of a follow-on question for me. I mean, Berlin, Leominster.
Right.
How do you not be bored? How do you prioritize? How do you make sure that everything gets done in town? How are you for organizing you and your staff?
I'm very good at organizing, and the heavier the workload, the more I appreciate going to work, to be honest with you. I like to be overwhelmed and challenged, and in an environment like this, there's no such thing as not having some workload in front of you. There's always something to do.
all right. Does that answer your question, Peg?
I'm sure there'll be more. I don't want to hog. Go ahead, I'll slide in and out. Go ahead.
Okay. Are there any recommendations you would have based on your knowledge of the current highway department here? And are there any processes or procedures that worked well for you in your previous roles that you would bring with if you were hired?
Well, without being in the department, it would be hard to make any recommendations. From what I see, it seems to run fairly well the way it is now. I'm all for change and implementing new strategies. One thing that bothered me quite greatly in Leominster was that's the way we've always done it. And even if it wasn't a correct way, or it was sometimes going backwards, there's nothing wrong with trying something new. It may not work, but let's try something. So I'm all for trying and listening and approaching things at a different angle.
And is there anything in your previous roles that you could think of that you might be able to bring to Berlin?
I'm sure there are many things, to be honest with you. My background is basically mechanics. Some of the equipment that was benched in the city, I pulled back out and resurrected, and we put back into service and saved a considerable amount of money by doing that. I actually bought a couple of used pieces of equipment and refurbished those when we had time and put those into service, and saved a considerable amount of money doing that.
Okay. Lisa, do you want to ask the next one?
Okay. Coming into this position, you may experience, well, we've kind of covered this bit, but you may experience some resistance to change. How will you handle that? How do you motivate others to get things done?
Well, somebody within the department, if they're resistant to change, I would ask them their approach and how they think we should go about doing it, and we would maybe try it and listen to different ideas. You know, I'm not saying the ideas that I have are the best or the right way to do things, so if somebody else has some input on doing something different, I would, you know, for sure listen to it and maybe try it if we could and it made sense.
We also, another aspect of this is we're a very small community, and you may get input from sources outside of your department.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I had 42,000 sources of input, so you listen to them. You know, everybody has an idea on how something should get done or not get done.
And then pick the right one or the best one.
The ultimate goal is to get the job done.
Right.
Piggybacking off Lisa's question for a minute, and actually that was one that I was going to ask, is that even though you may have had input from 40,000, I guarantee you that 3,000 voices are extremely loud.
Yes, the small town thing is a thing.
That is correct.
It's a
Small
thing.
town thing is a thing. You're an outsider. You're not a townie. How do you overcome that?
I'm not sure. I guess with some help from the other department heads in town and, you know, try to work through it. You know, I'm not afraid of going to work, so like I said, the ultimate goal is to get the job done. If people have a problem with the way that we go about getting the job done, well, then we'd have to listen to them. And, you know, we're here to do what's best for the public, is what it comes down to.
Okay. Tell us about your financial management skills. Have you ever prepared a budget, a capital plan? Are you familiar with the fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th?
So I never have prepared a budget. I've had to work within the constraints of a budget. I was responsible for the capital improvement plan for all the equipment, vehicles regarding the DPW and rec department, cemetery, some of the other outside departments relied on some of the experience I had trying to project what equipment they would need over the next 5 years. There was 3 parts of that. What was the third part?
Let's see, budget, capital plan, and familiar with the fiscal year.
Fiscal year, yes, and procurement laws.
Okay.
Sometimes I didn't quite pay attention to all of them and get called on the carpet, but that's how you learn. You know, I wasn't up on all the procurement laws, but I did very well trying to stay within the boundaries of that.
Okay. Mary would be calling you to the carpet. She's our procurement officer.
Did you ever have to advocate for things in the budget, or
Oh, yes. Yeah.
how do you feel about, you know, making sure that your voice is heard when things are necessary and needed?
Well, you just have to try to justify why you need a specific piece of equipment. I mean, you can't obviously project what you're going to need for the next 5 years. You try to come up with a scenario, but if the front end loader blows up 2 years out and it's not on the list, you can't go without a front end loader. You have to do some juggling. It may be steal from another department to get what you need to get the job done.
Okay. Do you want to ask the next one too?
Are you familiar with municipal policy and procedures?
Yes.
You already, yeah. So I think
Okay.
we kind of covered that one.
So, on your resume, you mentioned that you supervised activities and you managed snow and ice operations and you coordinated construction projects. What tools did you use? How did you make sure that the word got out to everybody on what needed to be done and when?
The best tool that I own is my cell phone. And as far as before we left the end of the day, my guys knew what they were doing tomorrow, unless something blew up overnight, or there was always a backup plan in case of equipment failure, weather, or say your operator called out sick. Now you can't put that crew together. But I always had a projected list, and we tried to target, depending on the weather, the most important things and what crews were available at that particular time.
Okay. So, forgive me for a minute. So, best laid plans are awesome. I'm a checklist guru and live and breathe by them, even for the grocery store and what I need to do during the day. What happens when your plan blows up at 8:15?
Well, you either have to throw more equipment at it or pull another crew off another job to to fix whatever that particular problem is. You know,
But how do you determine priority? Because I can guarantee you, Lisa will come to you and say, this needs to be done. Somebody from the town may come and say, this has been ongoing for the past 6 months. Something else may come up, so now you've got 3 different people saying, I need you now.
well, the first priority would be in the interest of public safety. I mean, if a bunch of desks need to get moved out of a school or something, obviously that's not a priority. If we have a road that just collapsed because a culvert let go or something to that effect. So, you know, you try to do the best you can and keep the roads and public safety as a priority, and then handle what you can after that. Obviously, with such a small crew, you can't do it all at once.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to bring up is you don't really have another crew to
Right.
pull from.
Right.
You have a crew.
Well, people have to understand that also. You only have so many people to get the job done. This is, you know,
They're pretty good about understanding that. Did you want to ask the next one, Peg, or do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Are you comfortable with Microsoft Word?
yes, I am.
Excel for payroll expenses, budget tracking?
Okay, so I haven't done any payroll,
Mhm.
if that's what you're asking, but I do use Excel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to ask the next one, or do you have anything to follow up on?
I guess just follow up. You said you use your cell phone a lot. Is that
Yes.
text and email and
Yes.
the whole? Okay. Let's see. How would you rate your oral and written communication skills? What kind of communication should the highway and facilities superintendent communicate with other town employees, police, fire, building inspector, school department, and with the town residents? You may be required to attend periodic night meetings and work with volunteer committees and boards. Would this be an issue for you? That's a lot of questions altogether.
Yeah. Might want to start with the beginning.
Yeah. Oral and written communication skills.
I wouldn't say excellent, but I'm okay speaking in public.
And written, as far as communicating with the public, communicating
Yeah.
in writing on different things, writing you're part of the annual town report, those
No problem.
pieces. No problem. Okay. And then communication, what are your feelings about communicating with the other departments in town and working with the other
I took
departments
great
in town?
pride in communicating with the other departments. When I took the position in Leominster, it was no communication. There was none. You know, we were the DPW, the fire department, the police, everything was separate. And I took great pride in erasing those lines and barriers, and I worked extremely well with all the departments citywide. The Center for Technical Education, they loved me. They hated to see me go because they would need machinery moved, and I would send a crew up there to move lathes or woodworking machines or whatever they had to do. The fire department is a very good friend of mine, the fire chief, and the same with him. If they needed something done, we would just, it was a priority. With these are all, in my mind, public safety departments, and if they have an issue, it should be addressed fairly quickly. That's just how I felt, and it worked. If I needed something from them, they would do the same thing. It was reciprocal.
And we do have, we have a lot of volunteer committees who do a lot of the work in town, and they sometimes require help and may have varying levels of knowledge or understanding of process. What is your feeling about working with those types of individuals?
I worked extensively with volunteer at the rec department. They would do weekend cleanups at least once a month, and we would send, quite often they needed a wood chipper. They would do cleaning up the brush and stuff, and I wouldn't let a volunteer group run our wood chipper. I would send one of my guys with a truck and a chipper, and it worked very well. We did a lot with the Little League fields. The parents would do the cleanup, and we would go and run a chainsaw. We wouldn't let the people use power tools if we could help it.
Okay, and then also it's not a ton, but night meetings are sometimes required with conservation,
Yep.
with recreation, those types of things.
I did all the DOT meetings. They were all at night, for the most part. I did the conservation as well.
Okay.
I have a few more. So let's say you're offered this position. It's a 3-parter. I'll go one at a time. How do you get to know your people?
The workers?
Yes.
My thought is you spend as much time in the field with them as you can. I'm not sure if the position allows for that, but I think that's be the best way to get to know them and see what their capabilities are.
Part two, let's say you're spending time in the field with insert person here, and you're noticing that they're doing something wrong, they're taking a shortcut, not following up. How do you give constructive feedback to ensure that the right behaviors are there, the right skill sets are being used?
Well, you would probably, I would wait till the end of the day and have a conversation with them, somewhere away from the rest of the crowd. And, maybe give them some pointers or some hints and watch the next round and see if they took any of your advice, or maybe don't take your advice.
And then final of three, how are you going to set goals for your people? How are you going to make them improve in their job, in their skill set, so they're not just doing the same thing day after day? A worker comes to you and says, hey, I really want to.
Well, I'm big into training. I'm big into the Bay State Roads program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's an organization that UMass Amherst put together. And not only is it a good training, but it's a lot of fun. And they will actually come to your town and do training on site. And they have, every other town in the Commonwealth can host an activity. And it's a day out for the guys, and they learn something, and it is fun. So, they have training for every aspect of anything the DPW would do. And you can even customize a class. I was trying to get them to customize a class so my guys could learn how to use their laptops in the field, because most of us aren't computer literate. So I tried to get all my foremen laptops. It was just an easier way to communicate, and they wouldn't use them because they didn't know how. So I was in the process of putting that class together when I left. So that's one way to try to get the employees more interested and set some goals. Another one is some type of an incentive, pay-wise. If they achieve and get a certain license, they maybe get a stipend or, an increased pay. I'm not sure budget-wise how that would work, but
You might have to build it into your
yeah.
budget.
Mhm.
Okay. Are you good, Peg?
No, I have other questions. Okay.
That's what this is for.
So, what do you need from us to be successful? And not just us, but us.
Just a good, clean working environment. That's all I'm looking for.
What concerns do you have about coming to Berlin and working here?
I don't have any.
And what questions do you have for us on this role?
I don't have any questions for you. I really don't. I feel very confident that I could do this job and not skip a beat, to be honest with you.
I mean, so we've talked a lot about your background in construction and working to make sure that public safety is number one. What about the other side? What about building maintenance? Because obviously we need you to take care of us in the town, so no one's driving into a gigantic pothole, but something as simple as the front of the building. You want the impression of people coming into the town for the first time to see what we truly are and what we're proud of. So how do you balance, I gotta mow a lawn, I gotta fix a road, I gotta fix the shrubs because, dear God, they're all dead.
Good question.
It's true.
I guess it depends on how many times the phone rings about the dead shrubs.
But how do you balance it? I mean, because they're concerns, and it kind of goes to Lisa's point and our point about, we are a small town, but we are a very vocal town, and you will find folks that will come to you while you're getting coffee or someplace in town and say, my road has a hole, and other ones that will say, can you go cut down a tree because X, Y, Z? So just kind of curious how you'd balance both
Well,
roles.
you do the best you can with the resources you have. I mean, if it means you got to come in early one morning and take care of the shrubs, I guess that's what you do.
And just in general, facilities. A part of this job as it stands right now is to take care of the facilities in the building too. We have some pretty new analytics in here and building controls. What what is your experience and thoughts about those?
Well, I couldn't build you a house if you wanted me to. I could build you a barn. I understand the mechanics of operating a building. I have some electrical background, although I would not do any electrical work in a public building. Nothing, I don't think I'm afraid to look at anything within a structure like this. Obviously you can't do everything, and I understand what limitations I have, and I'm not sure what else limitations the crew has, but if it's something we shouldn't be doing, I wouldn't even, make an attempt at trying to do it. I'd find an outside vendor to correct the problem, whatever it is. But I'm not afraid of building maintenance. That doesn't scare me. Outside grounds maintenance, no problem.
And potential training for, knowing how to handle the building analytics that we have.
Yep.
And the software that we have to run them.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure the guys get trained to do the same thing. Yeah.
I have two more.
Wait a minute.
I know, I'm waiting.
My turn.
I'm waiting, I'm just saying.
I'll give you an easy one. Give us an example of how you have worked cooperatively with members of the public and/or committees in a difficult situation.
How you would correct?
How have you worked cooperatively with members of the public or committees in a difficult situation? Can you give us an example?
Well, one of the last problems we had, there's a stream that runs right through the center of town, and one of the bankings, there used to be a building sitting on top of it. They tore the building down 40 years ago, and the building actually helped hold the walls of the stream bed up in place. And over the years, the walls were eroded, washed out under. One of the walls fell down into the stream, and we were starting to lose the road, which isn't really a major problem, except there was a sewer trunk line that runs right alongside the road, and it was within 5 feet of where the banking let go. And had that sewer trunk line, it was going to go in the river. Had it gone in the river, there was probably 10,000 gallons of raw sewage would have been dumped into that river. So it was raining like crazy, like it has been recently. So I had to quickly come up with a solution. So we put Jersey barriers in the stream bed, which didn't make the conservation people too happy, but it corrected the problem. And we didn't lose the sewer line. And there was many conservation meetings after that they came up with a cease and desist and all kinds of crazy things. But the barriers are still in the stream bed because it's probably a $4 or $5 million fix to do it correctly. So not that we appeased everybody, but I definitely fixed the problem. Explained to the conservation committee that this had to be done, otherwise it would have been serious lot of money for fines if the sewage ended up in the river. And they're trying to get a plan engineered now, so at some point it will be fixed 100%, but that was 2 years ago. And the Jersey barriers are still in the stream bed.
And how did conservation feel about your relationship after this?
Once I explained that we had no choice, it wasn't like I wanted to do this, it just had to be done. There had to be, it was an emergency. And up front they were pretty vocal, but after you explained to them that, the tragedy that could have taken place, and this was the only way that I could see to correct it in a short order with no money, because where do you come up with money to fix something like that in a half a day? So that was challenging.
Okay.
On your resume, you state that you're often sought after for construction advice, or you have effective decision-making with ability for quick comprehension. Can you provide examples of both statements?
Okay, one was the statement I just, the scenario I just gave you. The other, we had another project on Route 13. Route 13 is a main corridor, north-south. I had to close that road because the sewer line let go right directly on top of the Nashua River, and it was dumping a lot of stuff into the river that it shouldn't have been. And we had to, it was a panic, 911. There was a hole in the bridge. It's a historical bridge, so I had to deal with Mass DOT. It's their bridge. We had 3 sewer lines that run over it. I had to close the road immediately. And I called in a contractor that was doing work for the city at the current time. They still do work for the city. And between the two of us, we came up with a plan in short order on how to at least stop the sewage from going into the river with some bypass pipes. And I estimated at that time that it was probably a 2-week repair, and which didn't make a lot of people happy, but there wasn't much we could do about it. And once we started tearing into the deck, we found old trolley tracks in the deck of the bridge that were concreted in on top of the gas line. So we ended up, it took us 10 days. We finished the project. We worked nonstop. But that was quite a challenge, and took a lot of, we had two of this company, Blue Diamond Construction, he had 2 crews on the bridge, and we had 2 city crews on the bridge. And they worked quite well together. And we got a lot of praise from the fire department was the most upset because they lost access to the north side of the city.
I have one more, I have 2 more, but I'll wait. No, I don't want to hog.
All right, Lisa, do you have something?
Let's see, have you ever had a conflict with your supervisor or coworker? How did you handle it?
I've had conflicts with my supervisor, and it was usually a little bit of shouting match, and we resolve the issue and go have a cup of coffee after. You still have to work with these people. You know, you can disagree and still be friends. So, coworkers, a few of my coworkers we had disagreements with, but a lot of it came from, even in the city, I was an outsider. I came into a position, I was asked to get the department to run in a formal manner, and that kind of ruffled a few feathers. So some of the guys that were there for a while took offense to that, and they would get a little boisterous, you know, and I wouldn't flex my muscles, but at the end of the day, I would explain to them that I'm still the boss. We can disagree, but like it or not, if I sent you guys to do something, it's not something I came up with on my own. There was a directive from somewhere. So you can be mad at me, but generally it's not my decision that's making you go this way. So
Okay. Peg, did you have something, or you want me to go on?
No, go ahead.
Actually, the next one is a question.
I know,
You need
but
to
you
ask.
can go, and then I'll go.
Oh, all right. Okay, so in what areas do you have limited exposure and feel it would be necessary to enhance your knowledge if you became our highway and facilities superintendent? And I can name off some areas, or if you feel that you could just answer the question, that's fine.
I feel the only area that I would be lacking in would be the building maintenance,
The facilities.
for facilities maintenance. That'd be the only area that, all the construction stuff, tree, shrub, roadside maintenance, none of that, I feel like I could fulfill those duties 100%.
Okay. So you're good with water, cemetery. We highway right now helps cemetery out occasionally when they need
Mhm.
like a road or whatever. Grounds maintenance. You good with that as
Yes.
far as, okay. And highways. We've stuck in the word recycling,
Yeah.
just in case. Catch basins.
Mhm.
So, what is it that facilities maintenance, why do you feel not as confident?
Well, it's not something that is part of my portfolio that I did ever, other than on my own. So, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not saying I can't do it, but it's the only area that I don't have experience on such a scale.
Right. Okay, that's fair. Peg?
We currently have an issue going on right now with our library, our very small library that has been around forever. We were late in getting proposals together. We're working with Mass DEP. If we're late on deadlines, there are fees. There are significant daily fees. We're working with an outside organization to make sure that the items that need to be done are done. How do you oversee this? How do you keep someone on track? Currently, there's a lot of follow-up. Has anyone heard? Has anyone heard? Has anyone heard? As the date is growing closer and closer and closer to get things done. we really can't afford to do the have you heard, have you heard? So how do you step in and work with this organization to make sure that the town stays on track so that there are not penalties that are incurred, and above all, that our library is not impacted and closed to the town of Berlin?
I would direct phone call and maybe site visit, site meeting, site, see how much progress has been made to the final goal. I mean, I like direct contact. Depending on who it is, are you in your office? Yes, I'll be right there.
Okay. Are we good? You have anything else?
I have one.
Sure.
One of the things that I think that we need some work on is to keep people in town better informed about what the highway department is doing and when they're doing it. How would you facilitate that?
Well, I see you have a Facebook page, so you could probably get on social media and maybe once a week send out or post something online, upcoming projects. Of course, they change, so that's another avenue of people. I would do that in Leominster, and you'd get off track and not get a project done, and then people would start chiming in. You said you were going to do this, and it's not done. So,
Okay.
as far as we would do, it was successful with the paving program because you could kind of estimate when that would go and how long it would take. So people would be grateful that you would do that. But, just say if you were going to close a road to take a tree down and it rained that day, you didn't take the tree down, then that's all you heard about. You said you were taking the tree down, you didn't take it down.
What about general things like when you're gonna sweep the sand off the road or those types of things?
Yeah, that's
you give a window or.
Right, it's
are
a
you-
window. It's a generalized, for the month of April, we're going to sweep.
And you're not opposed to.
I'm not opposed to
providing
posting that at all, not at all.
Okay. Peg, did you have anything else?
I did. I had asked you about setting goals for your people, so now I ask you, what are your goals and your achievements that you want to
My
complete?
goals with running a department such as this is to be like Keith when he walks out the door to hand the keys to somebody and it still runs. To me, that's a successful. You were successful in your position if somebody can take over your job without too much of a hiccup.
I'm out.
You are.
I am.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Or do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any
Yes.
questions.
So we have one other interview this evening, and then we will have a discussion and make a decision, or base the decision on perhaps checking your references and that kind of thing. And that's sort of our timeline for Keith is leaving very shortly, and we did want to have some overlap if we could. So we will be making a decision shortly.
Okay, that was actually one of my questions is when.
I was gonna say availability.
Yeah.
What is your availability? Should you?
I think it'd be customary to give the town 2 weeks where I am. But I was at, how long before Keith is leaving was one of my questions.
Well, he's
Soon.
officially leaving by, what, the 30th, is it? And, I've told him, we'll see.
Okay.
If we need his help, he's not too
Right.
far.
Right,
so,
that's helpful.
Yeah. So,
When I walked in up there, there was animosity and there was no contacting the previous general foreman. So,
no, you've met
figure it
Keith.
out.
He's
Yeah.
very, he'd be very easy to get hold of. If you had questions or anything, it'd be very, very easy.
okay, very good. I have a list of references. Would you like me to, should it go
Sure.
that far? We'll save a step, I guess.
All right,
You are.
thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
coming back. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
No,
What? I know I went off script.
no, I just want you to, you have to basically do the same questions.
Oh, I did, and I'm writing them over.
For the same,
Indeed.
for the other candidate.
Mhm.
All right. Just making sure.
Mhm.
Cross our Ts. Dot
Absolutely.
our Is.
So that only goes here.
You ready?
That goes to our.
Is he out there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Come on in. Make sure I got my questions down. Hi, Fred. How are you? Good. You want to? Yeah, I was gonna say, take a seat.
It's nice to see you.
Fred, I'm Peg. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Lisa Wysocki.
How you doing, Lisa? Nice to meet you.
So, did you want to start again, Lisa?
Sure.
All right.
So tell us why you want to become Berlin's Highway and Facilities Superintendent.
Well, I feel with the experience I've had already in the town and the years I've devoted to it, I think I can upkeep the standard that we are at now and hopefully make it a little bit better as we go along. And I'm still kind of relatively young and feel that you wouldn't have to do another job search for at least another 15 years.
All right. Do you want to go next,
No,
Peg?
no, I'm
Oh, we're gonna go the
transferring
other way?
questions. I'm good.
All right,
Mhm.
okay. Are there any well, I don't know if this actually, well, I'm going to read it anyway because it may not apply since you work in the town, but are there any recommendations you would have based on your knowledge of the current highway department? Are there any processes or procedures that worked well for you in your previous roles that you would bring if you were hired? So, recommendations you would have for the highway, knowing what you know. Is there
Things
anything?
you'd fix, change,
Yeah.
improve upon.
Well, one thing I would definitely like to see, instead of line striping being done in the fall and having the paint being plowed off right away, doing it in the springtime, so at least we're getting a full year out of it. That was one of the big things. And the only other thing, which I mentioned during our other interview, was trying to work with the recreation committee because we mow the ball fields in the town offices and Legion Home, but the ball fields take up so much of our time mowing. It's usually one or two guys for almost a whole week. And like right now, we should be already moved into our new building, and we can't because we don't have the time to do it, not
Because
enough
the
rainy
grass
days.
is growing too fast.
It should have
Right.
been dead this time of year. And it'd be nice if we could find a way. I know Boylston has a summer program where kids come in and they take over the mowing aspect. The highway department still oversees it. And it's just one less thing that we wouldn't have to be focused on. And we can actually do our own jobs. I know there's a couple pipes that one guy mentioned that we should change up on Highland Street and give it a year before we pave it. So it settles and we don't have an issue with them. So it's just little things like that that I think would really help us out in the long run.
Okay.
You're a townie.
Yes.
Been here for a while. There's going to be potentially some resistance to you getting this position. How do you go from working side by side with people to now becoming their supervisor? So how would you address conflict within your department?
Well, actually, talking amongst ourselves now, I don't think I would have any resistance. But if I would, then it would have to be a one-on-one interaction with them to find out what their discrepancy is with me. And it's not like I'm the bossy type. I'm the one that's always helped out along the way. And yeah, just us talking amongst it, there hasn't been any negativity towards me. And
Okay.
So you don't think that there'd be any issue of, you're working side by side with, pick somebody, Mr. Spinney, because he's the only one that comes to mind. And now all of a sudden it's Jim, I need you to go do. And he's like, Fred, really? You know I hate blah, blah, blah. I've always hated blah, blah, blah. Why are you making me blah, blah, blah?
because we need to get it done. And actually, like the relationship we have now, even though he's foreman, we always, like, if something's got to be done, it's like a group discussion. This is how we're going to do it. Things are going to get done. And I've actually had times where I've kept the job moving along, even though he was on the job. And but I mean, if it came down to it, I know I could trust him in particular to do something because of his background in the field as well. Even Tom Menard, he would be the next senior guy. The newest guy we hired, Brian, I don't know much of his background, so it'd be one of those things where you'd always be thinking, oh my God, is he doing it this way? Maybe it should be done this way. But yeah, again, I don't think Jim is the type that won't take advice, not so much in order or, that type thing, but the relationship we all have now working together, I think is pretty good.
Can you, while you're on this, could you talk a little bit about any management experience that you might have?
The only management experience I have was in the military. I had 13 years in the military, and the last 6 years of it was, I was a sergeant at the time, but I had a section sergeant to report to. The only other stuff I would have is the fire department. I was on there 22, 23 years, and the last 7 years of it was a lieutenant's position with a crew under me. That's really the only leadership management other than being a dad at home. But yeah, that's about all I have for management.
And then one final question that I had. You're a townie. I go off coffee with you. We sit at the general store on the back bench, chit chat.
That's,
And I
don't go
say-
to the store.
And okay, don't go to the store, don't go to the dump, but I'll track you down in town. Fred, I need you to fix my road because I have a giant pothole in it. Chris runs into you. Oh my God. Tree fell down across the street. I need you to take care of it. Lisa comes. My horse fell in a hole up on Ball Hill. I need you to go fix it. How do you take that relationship from folks that you know in town, that you socialize with, that now you're the facilities guy, you're the maintenance guy, everyone's going to come to you with a, hey, can you do me a favor? How do you take care of it?
Well, irregardless of your positions, once the pothole's reported, it has to be fixed within 24 hours. So irregardless who reports it, it's got to be fixed. Whereas, we don't know what kind of hole your horse fell in. But just different things like that. I mean, I know it's like a thing of power or your position, but everyone's treated the same. There's no favoritism. There can't be favoritism because you should be making every decision as if the whole world's watching. That's why you want to build working relationships, but not like true friendships, because you don't want to step on someone's toes and make them feel bad. But in the end, you got to do what you got to do to get work done.
Okay. Thanks, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is it your turn?
See, I'm not sure
Number
how pertinent this is, number 3.
Oh, I think she sort of covered it, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your financial management skills. Have you ever prepared a budget, a capital plan? Are you familiar with the fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th?
I've never had to prepare one. I was never part of that, given my position on the department now. The capital planning, I looked in a little bit of it because, again, I've never been involved with it. Even on the fire department, that was the captain's level. So as lieutenant, we weren't involved with it. And to prepare a capital plan now, I know it's based on the raise in prices. So I'd have to go back a few years and then look at what we have now and then I guess do the estimate as to how much things had gone up previously. In my own financial management, again, it's just running my own home and dealing with my kids' management with their money now that they're working. But that's all I would have for financial.
How do you feel about advocating for the things that you feel that the town needs to do? The parking lot, I know that's been something that's come up over and over again, and I think that, whoever takes over in the DPW is going to need to start advocating for some of the things that the department needs.
Well,
How would you handle that? How do you feel about advocating for the things that your department needs?
I'm all for it. Even like grants, I know there are grants available for different parts of the DPW, and I know the parking lot's come up quite a few times in the past, been shot down. But whether it was shot down as a whole, maybe they can break it down in sections over time, like the cemetery's doing a little bit each year to get their roadway done. So you would pick, whether the front is worse than where the apparatus pulls out, and break it down over a couple of years so that way the project can get completed.
Would you object if you were asked to go to 19 Carter and talk about why we need the pavement in the parking lot repaired?
Oh, no, because,
Or-
well, that's the part of it. Like, if you tell people this is what we need, but they don't understand why you need it. So you kind of have to explain different things. And I remember the previous Superintendent Dennis having to get up when we first wanted to get a roadside mower,
Mhm.
because people didn't know anything about it, didn't know what it did. So yeah, you would have to get up and speak,
Mhm.
and explain why you think it needs to be done, how long it's been like that. And I know there's different means out there with the porous concrete asphalt, which is another, it's all part of for like water management, that could probably be used in the parking lot. But yeah, I mean, you gotta explain things, other than people aren't gonna know. I mean, I'm that way when someone tells me something. I look things up if I have to.
Okay. Are you familiar with the municipal policy and procedures, procurement, any of the other?
I know some of the procurement just by what Keith was talking about. Every time he had to get like the lawn tractor, I think it was for the sweeper maybe, where you have to get 3 estimates to compare with. The policies and procedures, I am familiar with them, but not like to memory.
Mhm.
I mean, I still go back once in a while and have to look at them.
Okay. Next.
How comfortable are you with Word to potentially put together proposals, or for Excel with payroll and budget? Because we don't want people going over their budget, so how skilled are you software-wise?
Word, I'm very proficient with Word. I do a lot of my documents through Word, and MS is a great tool. Excel, actually that's what I did my resume through, was Excel. I'm good with it, but it may take me a couple extra hours if I want to try to build something in it, because there's really no template that I know of that I can use. And preparing a budget, I mean, it's what I do at home. And now that my kids are learning about it. But yeah, I mean, there's always something you can learn from Excel. It's a good tool.
You haven't had to do any kind of payroll ever?
The only payroll I had to do was actually it was for myself when I was animal inspector.
Okay.
It was just me, and I had a budget. I think at the time it was like $500 and the pay was like $50.
Right.
But that was the only time I had to fill out an actual expense form.
And you haven't had any part in the budget tracking or
No.
with Keith? Okay. All right.
How would you rate your oral and written communication skills? This is a multi-thing question, but let's start there.
Written skills, I can do better on paper than I can verbally sometimes, because it's hard to put what you're thinking into words at the same time. But written, I could write you a pretty good novel if you needed it.
Okay.
But public speaking, I think I do okay, given my limited background in it. The only other time I really had to do like an open public speaking was a PowerPoint I presented to the fire department in front of that department.
Okay. And you'd have to get up in front of town meeting and
Yes.
advocate for what you need and those types of things. What kind of communication should the highway and facilities superintendent use with other town employees, police, fire, building inspector, school department?
Not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, that's
What-
kind of
yeah.
worded.
I probably didn't word it correctly.
Okay.
What kind of communication would you use when you were communicating with other town employees, police, fire, building inspector, school department? I mean, there are certain things that they would have to know or contact you with. I'm assuming you do email. or, you know, you don't have any fear of communicating with those different departments?
Oh, no, definitely not. From what I understand now, they have department meeting heads meeting once a week, I think.
Once a month.
So
Once a
I
month,
think it's,
yeah.
or once a month. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a round table with them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you really should have an open communication with all of them because that's kind of what makes everybody work along together. Especially if something big happens, everyone's kind of on the same page.
Okay. Let's see, town residents.
Mhm.
I think one of the areas that we sort of need to do better in is communicating better with town residents what the highway department is doing. What are your thoughts on that, and how would you
Yeah,
facilitate?
most recently, I think the part of that would have been the poison spraying. That wasn't really put out to the town. One thing that I've mentioned before, which I've seen other towns do, is they even put street sweeping out there. They tell the residents, we're going to be coming by these streets, hopefully on these certain days, granted the weather, so it gives people a chance to get their things out so the sweeper can pick them up. I know that I think the only time anything's ever been set out was like when we had to close a road for paving, and that was basically just a sign. Because we were always told you can't do flyers and put them in the mailbox because it's, you know, it's this whole federal thing, you can't do that.
But you would have no issue with putting that information out over Facebook or trying to communicate more effectively what the highway department is going to be doing in town. That would not be an issue for you.
Oh, not at all. Because we've even talked about having the highway have a Facebook page where like the police and fire have pages, but it's like, well, who's going to run it? Who's going to update it? Who's going to do this? But it's a great tool to put out. Even with things like, I've posted things on the Neighbors Connect page before, whether it be like heat advisory stuff or even snowstorm things, you know, if your car's disabled, don't just leave it. But yeah, I mean, it's great to inform the public of anything that has to be done.
So you work well with Facebook.
Yes.
You can do that yourself. So apparently you were all saying who's going to do it.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, because this has been going on like a couple years, and the one kid that was driving it really wasn't mature enough to be doing it, and it's like, you know, well, I can't tell him no because it's not my point to say no. But that's why it was nice. The police would, you know, throw little bits up, you know, if there was a tree down, stay away from this area of the road and that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, and then, you know, everything's like, well, you know, you hear a lot of people talk bad about social media. It's like, well, you know, but it's kind of a nice thing because it's an instant thing. It's out there. People understand. But, you know, we're not anywhere on the town's website. So it's not like we can't post annual things like, you know, the sweeping schedule, a reminder that you don't plow your snow on the street, things like that. So it's tough on that point. But yeah, it'd be nice to actually get the word out to residents about things going on in town.
You may be required to attend periodic night meetings and work with volunteer committees and boards. Would this be an issue for you?
No, it's something I've done with the fire department over the years. It was every Monday night, basically every month. So it's not bad that I have to attend or come out. The only times would be tough would obviously be winter time if we were out doing snow removal or something like that and I couldn't make the meeting.
Well, obviously the, you know, priorities.
Yeah.
Snow removal trumps conservation meeting.
We
or
can
whatever,
find you,
yeah.
you get in the truck, just saying.
Well, conference call.
There you go, conference call you in.
All right, Peg, you want to do one or?
So I know earlier when we talked about Fred, you're a townie, and how do you work with the folks? I mean, but have you had any examples that you've had where you've had a conflict with a supervisor or a coworker, and how did you handle it?
I've actually had one with a foreman and superintendent. The foreman, we basically just talked it out, you know, kind of, it's an argument thing between us, and then we usually agree on it, and we go our separate ways. My last incident was with the superintendent of last year, I think it was last year, during the snowstorm, where something had happened to one of the loaders, and I didn't hear any transmission on the radio. So I went down to load up on my last load and Keith was on his way out, and it was one of those, you know, it started out, I guess, as like an argument, you know, as the you heard it, you didn't hear it kind of thing, and then it ended up he wanted to load the truck for me, and I was just already in the mood to do it, so he went to grab the door, and I grabbed his arm, which I guess I wasn't supposed to grab his arm, and I told him I would do it my effing self. And then he just went about his way, and I went about doing my way. And like a couple days later, I got a letter that I was being reprimanded for it. And I don't know if that just stayed in my folder for a few days or, you know, a couple months or whatever. But after that, like, as far as I know, Keith and I haven't been at each other at all.
Okay. I think I skipped.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you want to do 8 or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Give us an example of how you've worked cooperatively with members of the public or committees in a difficult situation.
Gosh, not so much on the highway department. I've had to work with conservation and DEP on water hole maintenance and trying to set up different water holes. But I don't believe I've done much of that on the highway end of things. Because usually it was
Any
either
kind
Jim
of
or Keith.
difficult situation with a resident or...
Oh, like conflict with the...
Yeah,
conflict with anybody, basically,
Yeah,
in
basically.
the course of your job.
Oh, yes.
And how did you deal with it?
Yeah, this would be one. It was one of those snowplow type incidents where there was a gentleman on Derby Road that constantly did it. And he was always given the letter, the copy of the bylaw that says you can't do it once a truck goes by. And he just constantly did it. So he always got letters and letters and letters. And I caught him doing it one time, actually took pictures, and he started getting, you know, a little upset with it. So I had called Keith up over the radio and had the cruiser come up. And at that point, I just let the police deal with it because it's a town bylaw. I let them handle it. But Keith, you know, I had him come up because he was the one that was sending him the letters, and he just wasn't adhering to it. And he still continues to do it every, you know, snowstorm. So it's one of the things he's never going to change. So we just got to deal with him.
Okay. I think we're at 10, which, do you want Peg to do that one, or do you want to do the
can.
note?
I mean, it's fine. You're up to date on it too.
Well,
You know about the library ACO. How would you follow through with this? Make sure that the deadlines are met and all of the... You don't know about
I
the
know
highway.
nothing about it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, wrong assumption.
we're working on
Should know about the
a
highway
public
ACO.
water supply, you know, for the library. And now we have a company that Keith has hired
What
to do
water?
the water testing.
Yes.
Yes, now, are you up to speed?
Well, no, I just know Keith did mention at one point that the library had to start getting water tested. And the employee that used to work here, Tom, used to do all the water stuff. But since Tom had left, no one else had the water license for it. So that's when he contracted Whitewater to do this place and now the library. Because I've even asked, what about the new highway department? But we have drinking water. We don't really. But that's all I know is that they were testing the water up there.
Well, there's a number of deliverables by specific dates, and there's fines if we don't hit those dates. Daily fines, which obviously we want to avoid, and avoid closing the library down if there's something is wrong with the water. So where it is an outside organization, that's going to fall under you in this role. How do you stay on top of that so that the 3 of us, 4 of us aren't sitting going, got an update, got an update? September 1st is a week and a half away. Got an update, got an update?
Well, that would be my job, is always calling and keeping contact with them to find out where they are. And are they treating the water now? Is there a problem with the water?
I think they're just testing.
Just
the-
They're testing it.
Okay.
There
But the
is-
testing is going to get
Right.
progressively, they will test
More
more and more
involved.
things,
Mhm.
and it will be more involved. So the initial test came back okay, but there is potential down the road as the
To do
testing
more.
becomes more
Right.
complicated.
I mean, there's meters
for
that are
there to be an
installed. Title V was mentioned in one of the deliverables. So there really is, under each date, there's 4 or 5 items that need to be addressed. And again, just concerned that you're going to run out of time. DEP is heavily involved, and they're probably more of the, hey, what's going on? Hey, I need an update. Hey, I need an update than we are. So again, under your purview in this role, how do you stay on top of it to make sure, here comes September 1st, here comes 15 things that are due?
Well, they should have one point of contact
Mhm.
from the town. So you would constantly be in contact with them to find out where they are. And if there was anything that we would be doing to help them along to get their job done, if Tom allowed for us to do it as well, would be to help them in whatever way we can. But yeah, it would have to be my job to hound them, keep them on their track, to make sure that we don't get fined. I know that we've gotten in trouble before because we hadn't submitted paperwork on time. I don't know how that worked out or not. But yeah, I mean, I would have to be the bad guy, and you guys shouldn't have to be the bad guys.
And we'll just be the ones hounding you.
Yeah.
Every time you go to coffee at the general store,
I mean,
we'll be there.
my
Actually,
general
Peg will be
feeling
hounding
right
That's
now,
right, I'll
too,
be hounding
is
you.
Whitewater seems to be very on the ball.
Absolutely.
I have a very good
Yeah.
impression at this point, so.
But there's a lot of questions as far as the library trustees, are
Right.
asking us, and then Peg is asking Keith or whoever.
Right,
trying
because
to get the
obviously
answers.
they're very concerned. It's their library, it's our library, and they just want to make sure that everyone is staying on track of what
Right.
needs to be done. Okay, all right, I'm good.
Okay. Do you want to do the last one, or?
Sure. In what areas do you have limited exposure and feel it would be necessary to enhance your knowledge if you became our highway and facilities superintendent? What areas do you feel you would need more training, or where would you want to enhance your skills?
Or catch up, or yeah.
Well, I know one thing would be, I haven't really dealt with the facilities part of the job at all, other than changing air handling filters here in this building. Other than that, I don't really know much about it. There's no contact information. I haven't worked with anybody. And obviously the management end of things, I would hope that Keith would kind of bring me up to speed on how things are run on the department, because I wasn't involved with much of that. So it would have to be, relying on him to give me some insight on how he's got things going now. And then if there's something I can improve on then it'd be great. If not, then, it must be working the way it is. But I would definitely need to learn more about the facilities part of thing. Because, again, at the library, all we do is cover the air conditioners and uncover them. I really don't know much about it.
You're aware that we have had building analytics installed, and we have controls in the building that are
In
run
this
via
building?
computer, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And that we're sort of lacking in training in that area right now. How would you address that?
How would I address the training?
Well, how would
portion of
you
this
how would
one?
you address fixing the lack of training, the lack of? I mean, there's nobody, as far as I know, there's nobody in the department right now who understands quite how that works.
I know one gentleman, Tom Menard. He's got a little bit knowledge of it. The only other person was Tom Steele, but it was like Tom and Keith. One would change the computer settings, and the other one would change it back, and they would go back and forth. But I think Tom was here one day when they were doing some work on the system, because all he did was badmouth ATX. ATX? Is that
No,
that might be the
it's,
company?
ATC.
ATC. Yeah, from day one, it was one of those, they should just leave it alone, leave a thermostat in each room, and people, because I know June Baird's office is like the worst to control, and I'm not sure why, but I've stuck my head up in there, and I don't agree with, and I don't understand the common plenum, where, the air return goes out through the whole ceiling instead of like your house where it's plumbed. Each one has its own return.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really familiar with that part of the HVAC. And I know Keith had already had the air ducts cleaned once, which should be, I don't know, annually, biannually. But I can also rely on my son for poking questions, because that's what he graduated out of. But as for running the controls here, I mean, I'm computer literate, but I've never even seen the system, so I don't even know anything about it. So maybe it'd be wise to have ATC come in and actually have a couple people down there that would learn about it. That, if I'm not around to deal with something, then, whether it be the police chief or, someone other than our department in case we're out, and, someone else can handle that part of it.
I hope they don't.
So when things go badly in one of the town buildings,
Mhm.
say for example, when they desperately needed a roof at the library, or those kind of things. Are you confident enough that you could handle something like that also? Not just, the technology down in the basement here, but all of the other sorts of things that go along with facilities maintenance.
Yes, actually, we've done work on the other buildings, from the transfer station to the cell cemetery shed, on our own as a department. But I have no problem reaching out and contracting services for, like, the library. That was a big job. I think we could have done it if we had the time. We as a department could have done it because I have my my builder's license. So I have the background of the carpentry and the things that we could basically do anything. If we had time and the right equipment. But as reaching out to get the job done, I think I could handle it.
Okay.
If in the future, there's been some talk about the transfer station eventually maybe going under highway, what would your feelings or thoughts be on that and your ability to integrate that into the department?
Well, the first thing, especially talking with Tom Menard, because again, he goes to like the Barry transfer station, and our setup right now is like a mess, according to him. So it'd be nice to streamline it, like more everything on one side, so you don't have people crossing all the time. And we've talked about it before, the chance of it coming down, because it's called the golden button. You get to push the button. But I've worked down there filling in for Pete many years ago, a couple of times, so I have an idea how that was done. And even now, we go down and we do things around the transfer station for him, whether it be crushing the containers and getting them ready for packing. Just recently, a couple of years ago, Keith had worked with them to get it paved. But what little bit it is and the days that it's open, I think we could probably work around it with, if one of our guys had to work the transfer station all one day versus, working with the highway and then getting a different day. But I don't think that would be a big issue.
Any other questions?
I have a couple. I know, sorry, it's the background. The other gentleman I had asked about what he saw to set goals for his people, or to set goals for himself, or how he'd give feedback to his folks. Just interested in your thoughts on how you're going to develop your people.
Well, I know there's a lot of training out there offered through MIA and the MMA that we don't have now. It'd be great if we could get more of that to come in, which would further their professional part as well as mine. And as our working relationship, I think it's pretty good. And it's one thing, kind words and encouragement goes a long, long way, which, would gain their respect, in the sense that, you wouldn't have to oversee them all the time, constantly hound them. You could have them do something and set out and just leave them be. Let them do their thing.
Do you have any questions for us? Concerns?
I
Job
didn't,
description
actually.
questions?
No, the only question I had, I asked the subcommittee, which was about the facilities part, whether, because it was a rumor going around that the facilities may be separate now. That was the only question I had.
A lot of things are on the table. We need to have facilities addressed more than it is now. So we're looking at options, I think, as to the best way to do that.
We haven't had a discussion per
Yeah,
se
yeah,
between the
it's
three of
just-
us.
It's tossing around.
And even if it doesn't change now, it could change in the future. We don't know till we have a discussion on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my only question.
Yeah. And I think I
Sure.
answered it pretty much the same way, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
So what do you need from us, Fred? What do you need from us? What do you need from the people behind you? What do you need from the people in your department and other departments to be successful?
Vote of confidence. Have faith. Even if there's a doubt, bring it to my attention and we can, work through it, figure it out. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
All right. Is there any other questions?
I'm out.
And if you have no other questions for us, then we will probably be letting you know shortly
Okay.
what the decision is. And I thank you for coming in again.
All right. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks again, Fred.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks, Fred.
Nice meeting you.
You bet.
All right. So I'm going to ask you both, how would you like to proceed at this point? Whether you'd like to have discussion. I think he did give me some references at one point, or we can get them
Yeah, I thought I saw
from, yeah. Okay. So I guess it's just a discussion on how you'd like to proceed, whether we have discussion now, we could have discussion now and later.
I'm also wondering, I know when we did the building inspector, we did get some feedback input from the committee. Does
Mhm.
anybody on the committee have input
On
they
the
would like to?
screening committee,
Yes.
tough call. I really can't shed any light one way or another. I think there's good reasons for both of them. And it's probably more of a directional thing. And the question that just came to me, that I wasn't here, so I don't know if you asked it, but how would Fred deal with the fact that he doesn't get the job? Because he's been such a long-term employee, you know, how is that gonna manifest for himself?
I don't think that can,
I don't
that
think
can
you can
play
ask.
into the you
You
can't.
can't ask that?
You can't
Well,
take that into consideration. That's not,
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
all right.
here's your standard answer. I'd be disappointed, but I'm gonna continue to do great in my job so that if another opportunity arises,
Well, at least
I'd like
that's
to
an
be
answer,
considered.
whether it's-
It is, I mean,
Yeah.
so it's either truthful or it's the standard answer of what
Correct,
you should
yeah.
give, so
You know, how you gonna
how you gonna
say
know?
anything on it?
Correct,
Right,
yep.
yeah.
I think it's pretty important, I just want to jump in, that you confirm that either or both of them really have the administrative skills, the Excel skills, the Word skills, payroll skills, because if one of them doesn't, that's going to really handicap them and make them trip. So if there's a way you can verify that in some way, I think that's important to consider.
And I said this to you, Chris, but I'll say it to both of you. I think what the select board has before them right now is, to Paul's point, a question of direction. Okay, do you wish to introduce someone from outside the organization as a potential change agent? Or would you rather invest in an internal candidate who may also bring change, but is maybe a little more prone to keeping things the way they are? And I thought that was kind of my takeaway from the interview process. So as far as the qualifications, there are differences between the two. There are, from a licensure and education standpoint, they're very similar. They both had similar, I guess, gaps in the facility side, speaking from the energy standpoint. A question for you to weigh is, which do you think is more capable of potentially learning that aspect of the job? Or, you know, as you talked about earlier, whether there's other options afoot that would factor into your decision. And then, you know, the last piece of it, one of the things that we did key on was there was some differences in financial management between the two candidates from an overall size of budget that was managed, responsibilities of financial management. Having said that, we wouldn't have passed both of these candidates on to you if we didn't feel that they were qualified and capable of doing the job.
Each one has a learning curve, and those two learning curves are different.
Mhm.
Fred knows the town inside out, what roads to plow, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. I think David Smith has enough experience behind him, but he still has to learn that aspect of the town. They both have some learning to do in terms of the paperwork, grants, Chapter 90, whatever. I think David might be a little further along on that than Fred, but how quickly how quickly can you train one versus the other? And in which direction? I mean, I know I'm not helping, but that's my conundrum.
Let's ask you, committee before us.
Okay.
What direction do you want the town to go? Do you want as is, or do you want a change agent to come in and shake the trees a little bit?
I really didn't think of David as a change agent.
Well, in
I
terms
really
of...
think he would be a good fit. I mean, either one would be a good fit, but I do feel as though, I think he would fit just as well as Fred. I didn't see him as a change agent.
I don't
Did
see him
you?
as a strong change agent.
No.
I see him coming in with quite a history of experience,
Yeah.
which obviously is very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
He and Fred may be somewhat on a par there, so then it becomes the paperwork nemesis.
I have to
And
say,
personality-wise, there may be some important differences.
Mm.
I have some concerns about the lack of management skills with Fred. I
Mhm.
like personality-wise, I really like the personality there, but I have some strong concerns about the lack of management.
I do too.
I'm not sure.
There are courses for that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure as a first management job that you throw somebody into something where they are really as independent as you have to be as our highway superintendent. This is someone who's really never managed people on a day-to-day basis, from what I could tell. And I think that might be an issue.
I think that's fair.
Do you have any input on that particular subject, Peg? I think David had quite a few employees,
He managed, according to his
140?
resume, he oversaw a crew of 40.
Yeah.
right?
But you can supervise a group of 40, but you don't have to be effective. You can just supervise 40. And is it, hey, I need everybody to pull together, can you help me? Or is it, you go plow, you go cut a tree, you go fill in a hole. So you're supervising, but I don't think we got into the management specific style.
One of the things that, and maybe this is where you were going, one of the things that he explained to us is with 40 people, he had certain crews, maybe one or two, that all he had to say was, go deal with the issue down there, and he would forget about them for the rest of the day because he had the confidence that they would accomplish what needed to be accomplished. And there were others that he needed to hold hands with.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells me he has some discerning ability relative to the talent he has to work with.
And management, being
Right.
able to manage.
I mean, I'm concerned though.
We only have one crew.
Well, see, and that's just it, that's my concern, is that when one of us asked him a question, he's like, oh, well, I just pull in a different crew. And right away, I'm thinking, so did you do research on the town and did you see how big the department really is? And we don't have 5 people over here who can go mow and 3 people over here who can go put a paint stripe down
Mhm.
and et cetera. You have a very distinct group of people.
He was well aware of that.
Yeah,
At
he
least
was.
2 occasions. First of all, we gave him a peremptory email saying, this is what you're walking into before you even agree to interview. And secondly, we did reinforce with him several times that, your
This is
crew
a working
4. This is
superintendent
a
job.
Hands-on.
And that was with all the candidates. In fact, we lost some candidates because of that reason. So that is definitely known. One thing that he didn't share with you, and I need to also give Fred some airtime here because I don't want to go either way, but he did share with us a story about, and he talked about refinishing or repurposing some of the equipment.
Mhm.
The story he shared with us was he didn't just do that himself, he took interested members of his crew and they did it together as kind of a skills transfer because his trade is actually being a mechanic, so that's his core thing. So I don't believe either of the gentlemen are at all afraid of getting their hands dirty or understand what, physical labor looks like. They're both quite familiar with it. When we asked, some of the questions you asked today were actually a subset of the questions we asked in our
Mhm.
interview. And one of the ones that I noticed you didn't talk about was snow and ice removal, and that was actually one of the areas where we spent a lot of time in the interviews. I would think it's fair to say that with Fred's local knowledge, he was easily on par with the more complicated work that David was doing in numerous positions. So I'm very confident that both gentlemen would have a handle on emergency snow removal operations. They both had the right mindset and they had the right planning approach to it. We did get some answers from other candidates that maybe were a little less in that vein, but it was definitely they shared a lot of common preparatory steps, which I thought put them at parity actually
Yeah.
in that area. Paul, would you?
I would agree, yeah.
Okay.
When I looked through the questions, I thought of the ones that I thought that Lisa and Peg should hear the answers to. Maybe that wasn't one I didn't happen to cover, but they both had, very similar answers.
Right.
As far as chapter, if you'd like, I can just run through our questions and give you the quick one.
Or anything that stands out, perhaps?
Chapter 90, we talked about, both of them are familiar with it. Neither one of them had actually done it before, but based on the feedback from Keith, it's not really an insurmountable task. It's a fairly straightforward calculation. First actions within the first month, obviously this was a little less applicable to Fred than it was to David, but David's answer, if I recall correctly, was partially what he gave here: meet with the department heads, meet with the crew, meet with yourselves, and also, try to be available to the townspeople.
Start to get to know the whole organization, being his crew and the town, department heads, you folks, Joe, everybody.
We got into more questions regarding customer service and differences, for example, between management and supervision, leadership and supervision. So the behavior we were probing for there was a micromanager, someone who was going to be, kind of in their shorts, so to speak. But I didn't find any evidence of that with either one.
With either one, no.
One of the two candidates. Technology. One of the things that David mentioned was that he's a mechanic by trade, so this was in reference to the facilities specifically, is he seized on something I said regarding that these buildings are complicated machines. And he said, well, machines are what I do, a screw is a screw, and that is not how they work together, is something that I'm able to figure out. Fred also gave good answers in the same vein of having familiarity with the systems. I thought there was maybe a little bit of an advantage to David on that, but there's no evidence to back that up. So that was my personal thing. Delegator versus doer. Both answered doer, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
One of the questions that we asked was government entities requiring to do more with less. So this is, how do you work under constraints? How do you build efficiency? Fred had an excellent example of sharing tree trimming and bucket truck, I believe it was,
Yeah.
with Boylston, which saved the town substantial amounts of money. In contrast with David, he mentioned that he repurposed several trucks and got them back on the road, which allowed the city to not have to spend additional dollars to do replacement vehicles. So they had comparable efficiency and cost savings type of things. I would say that from a total dollars standpoint, David's would be higher, but he also had more to work with, being a larger community. And please stop me if I'm messing anything up here. You asked a similar question about tell us about a time, actually Peg, you did, when things didn't work out as planned, and how did you recover from it? So that was a similar answer. David gave almost the same example to us as you. I don't recall what Fred said there.
I don't think you did.
Conflict with the supervisor, you asked. Chris asked the limited exposure question, so you got your answers on that. And we asked a supplemental question regarding the Green Community Program from an energy standpoint. They were both familiar with the program. One of the examples that David gave was actually, he worked with the wiring crew in Leominster to actually do some of the streetlight repairs in there. And from a Fred's standpoint, that's really not something that he's that closely involved with. I mean, he knew what we were doing, but didn't necessarily offer anything additional.
Just a thought that might help simplify things in terms of facilities management. I would put both of them at a 0. And
How does that
just deal
simplify
with
things?
Just deal with the highway aspect.
Correct.
That's going to be your most straightforward path. Facilities,
There are options.
some stuff can be learned. A lot of stuff you can call the guy, because there are management companies that take care of that until we get a little more established with a town administrator and all that. I think it would be a mistake to put a big onus on the facilities part of this applicant.
Yeah, you're just setting someone up to fail.
I believe so, yeah.
Well, I also feel like that's how I was thinking as I went through the interviews in the screening committee. But I also thought to myself, which one is going to say they're willing to learn?
Yes.
And that's really important.
Did you have a sense of?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. One of the reasons why we've been fixated on this, we being the energy committee, okay, I'm speaking as the energy committee right now, we've been fixated on facilities, is in this building in particular, also in the school, we have mechanical systems that are reaching the end of their useful life frame. They are entirely operational and working fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But when you have a very expensive piece of equipment, we're talking to the tune of $70,000, that has a rated engineering life of 20 years, and you're at 20 years, you need to be thinking about those things. So that was
You're
one
on
of
borrowed time.
You're on borrowed time, and we have a lot of borrowed time right now. So that was one of the areas where we were pushing all the applicants. That goes to the question of the 5-year plan, standing up for yourself, things like that. And I don't think we got a clear consensus
No, we didn't.
candidate on that, but I think that's something that I would ask you guys to take in your deliberations, is this is a pressing need for the town that needs to be addressed most likely by the next person in this role, at least until, like Paul says, the town manager.
I
can
guess
come in.
I guess I would differ with Tim on that, because you can hire that guy. You know, you go out and get bids.
That's true.
What's it gonna cost for service between the hours of 7 and 5? What's it gonna cost for 24-hour service? And sure, maybe you have to pay something up front to get a little more analysis on equipment, but they can certainly help. What's it gonna cost to replace A machine, B machine, whatever, to give you something to work with. And I don't think either of these candidates can do that.
What was your sense? Right now, I don't think, I know we have capital planning that's stepping in to do some of the planning, but I also think that whoever's in this position really needs to be able to plan going forward.
They should absolutely get involved at some level, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I'm not seeing that role really having been fulfilled up
isn't.
until this point. Do you feel either of them would be stronger in that area than the others?
As far as
Being able
Be able to
to
do a
set up a
capital plan?
plan, yeah, look at what we have
I gotta
Right.
go.
and go and go
Wait a second, I've got a
forward
question for my wife.
and go
it's
forward
your ballgame,
and
Tim.
make sure that we don't end up, you know, we replace all this equipment and then in another 20 years we're like, 20 years went by, we have, you know, $300,000 worth of stuff to replace again right now, because we didn't plan.
Well, it is systematic and periodic. I mean,
Oh, I
nothing
know,
lasts
but
forever.
you still-
So you're gonna
you
have
have
whatever
to-
that span is.
But you can look
20,
at when
30.
things, you know, in your house, you look at your furnace, you look at, you know, the various apparatus, and you go, okay, I'm gonna need to replace this at this point.
Most likely, right.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm trying
and
very hard to
I
be
think the
neutral.
town needs that plan.
I have a preference that I think you could probably intuit it, but what my sense was from the behavior that was shown to us is I thought David was a little more on the OCD scale. You know, I thought that he was very into everything has to be in its place before I go home, you know, and I need to make sure that my shop is clean. I have to make sure, I'm being a little bit euphemistic, but that was my sense. I mean that with no disrespect to Fred in any way, shape, or form, but some of the answers he gave, I felt that was there. Like one of the things, stories that he shared, and Chris, you can back me up on it because you saw it too, was, you know, when he dispatched a crew he made a park. Okay, that was something he didn't talk about today, but he had idle time. He had a crew idle time. There was an area in the town that was kind of blighted, and he took his DPW crew and they cleaned it up. You know, brought in what they needed. So that to me implied a behavior of active seeking of improvement in their area. So I can't say that Fred loves this town dearly. It's very clearly in the interview and what you saw tonight. If you handed him the reins, I don't know if he would be any different, but I can just tell you what we saw in the interview process.
Right,
I agree.
right.
Can I jump in and point out something? You're considering a guy who ran 40 bodies to now run 4-ish, which means that he might get bored in a hurry. He might find this a little bit underwhelming, and he might be highly overqualified. And I think getting
We did actually ask
Yes,
him
I did.
something similar to that.
He told me
That
no.
was one of Peg's first
Yeah, he
questions.
said no, but I mean, that's a given answer. Why
Right.
would you say, oh my
Of
God,
course.
yeah, I'm gonna be bored in the first week?
Well, I think some of the things that he did say in the screening committee interview, I mean, I feel a little lucky that I saw these guys twice. And I think some of the things that he talked about, he was looking forward to something that was just a little bit smaller than Leominster.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I would think that, I mean, our task for the screening committee was to provide the best possible candidate we could for you. And if the town of Berlin gets the benefit of a maybe overqualified, to your point, Peter, person for 2 years, isn't the town better for that? You know, maybe in 2 years, Fred would be the right choice after he's
Right.
worked
Been
under
mentored a
and
little
been
bit.
mentored a little bit. I don't know the answer to that. That's for you guys to decide.
Mhm.
I'm just saying it isn't, I think, appropriate to discount an overqualified.
Yeah, I could see David looking forward to this type of position because it wouldn't have all the headaches that he's used to. He would have a little
Brand
more
new ones.
control. He wouldn't be dealing with a mayor who had him jumping like Mexican jumping beans because the mayor, Mazzarelli's he's a piece of work. And he had to deal with him.
Mhm.
And he did. This would be a lot more calm situation and might be something he's just looking forward into this stage of his life. and,
Right.
You know, doing a good job.
And the other thing that he did share with us, was that he was a small business owner and he sold his business because, what did he say to us? He's like, his grandfather said, if the right person walks through here and offers me the right number, I'll sell it in an instant.
Yeah.
And his words to us was, the right person walked through my door, gave me the right number, and I sold it in an instant. And he went on to do a lot of different things. Unfortunately, he had a personal incident that he shared with the committee that I don't think in a public forum we should necessarily, but let's just say it involved a medical issue and something that was not under his control. And it kind of forced him back into a working environment, I guess.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I do remember is that when he gave his notice in Leominster, that they all were not happy to hear he was leaving. And,
But we have his word for it too. So
right, and well, we've got the
that's-
numbers to call. So.
Yeah, and part of, I mean, I'm gonna flip over to Fred for a second here. One of the things I would also ask you to discount is, it's easy to know too much about a person that wouldn't necessarily be part of the interview process under normal circumstances. So that's something that you could have to weigh in your deliberations as well.
Okay, then. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I...
No, I'm sorry, I need to go because there's some people waiting on me.
Yeah, they're
But
calling
this is
you.
important.
They're calling you.
I'll
That's
just
what I
add-
tell them, so,
Yeah.
you know.
I'll just add one
Thank you,
quick thing.
Paul.
I think the facilities thing, I think the concerns that you've all raised are valid ones, but I think the ownership of the issue should clearly remain that of the DPW supervisor.
You know, I have to say, Keith came into this position only as a highway superintendent. At some point, it made sense for the sitting selectman to say, Keith, we'd like to add this to your job description. And it has worked out fine. I mean, it may not be perfect. And maybe as we evolve, Berlin evolves, you know, it will evolve into something of its own. You know, perhaps a facilities manager. I'm not sure if this is the time to do that, but I guess that's up to this board.
Yeah, well, I think discussions at some point would be valid.
Yeah.
Um,
But at this point, when we're hiring a highway facilities superintendent, are we going to leave it the way it is right now for the moment?
Well, for the moment, we
Yeah.
don't really, I mean,
You
we're
probably
hiring
don't
for
have any
it.
choice
Right.
right now for the moment.
No. Well, we don't.
My
Continue.
guess is that either one of them, if we said, you know, we've decided we want to remove this from the position, they'd go, oh, great, I didn't know anything about it anyways.
Well,
As long as you have a plan that you lay out for either one of them, and
Mhm.
maybe there's some learning aspects of it, you know, professional or otherwise, I think either one would fare okay with that.
right.
Just, I'm cautious about expecting that from either one of them from the get-go.
Right.
I think that would be a mistake.
Well,
That's all I'm
originally, I
saying.
think the job was, they asked Keith to do it because they would have an issue at the library. They'd have to call Denny, who was the highway superintendent at the time, and say, Denny, can you help with this? You know, and then, you know, it would be the 1870 Town Hall had an issue, and they would have to call, you know, the selectman's office and ask if they could call Denny. You know, so this way it was like one point
Right.
person who could actually, you know, give assistance, you know, as needed or when needed, if it was possible, and otherwise they had to get a contractor in to help
And
out
don't forget,
with
he
what
was
was
learning
wrong.
on the fly,
Right.
you
So,
know, which slows things down. And that may be okay in many instances, but
yeah,
the bottom line is the individual's still learning on the fly.
right, right.
Just before Paul walks out the door, I see it as the executive board, you for now, if we don't have a town manager, should be setting some pretty clear expectations with whomever you hire, both from a developmental standpoint and as a reporting standpoint. Because I think any candidate that came before us required some coaching, development, and clear expectations. And I see that, and Paul, you can chime in, but right now, lacking a centralized town administrator, that's you guys. So I think for these folks to be successful, you're gonna have to coach them. You're gonna have to tell them what you want, what you need, and provide feedback to them on a regular basis on what they did well and what they didn't do.
And I'm gonna throw Joe under the bus, maybe he can offer some coaching to you guys. Oops, sorry, Joe, you still wanna meet with me? Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along.
Thanks, Paul.
Alright, so
All right.
we need to check references.
Do you feel like you want to do that at this
Well,
point?
Yeah,
For both of them?
yeah.
Okay,
Let's check references, see what.
okay.
folks think
Give
we
it a little
can do.
time to settle, and you think we could make a decision by next Monday?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, because it struck me as odd when I asked the specific question, what do you need from us to be successful?
To which candidate?
Both.
Okay.
And one candidate said nothing, which was kind of odd. And then one candidate went on and listed 3 or 4 things. I'm thinking, I mean, it just, when you go into any interview, any job, hi, what do you need? I need your help. I need your assistance. I'm going to need your guidance. I'm going to need you to help me point who to go to for questions. Those are general, this is my first job here and I don't have a clue. So when presented with a what do you need from us and I get nothing,
Yeah.
Maybe it was a misunderstanding of the
Well,
question.
If you recall, Chris, we asked the same thing. What questions do you have of this board? And that's my,
but I specifically asked, what do you need from us to be successful?
I understand.
No.
But to your point, as an applicant, you come prepared for that kind of question, okay?
Right.
To start the conversation. I can tell you that no candidate that we interviewed 5, answered that question in a conversational manner to extract information from the experience of the board that was sitting there.
Mm.
I don't know if they saw it as a sign of maybe weakness or whatever. I'm completely with you, Peg. I see your I am with you. I found that unusual too.
Mm.
It was definitely something that
Yeah. I kind of took it as a, no, you hire me, I'll take it from here.
Yeah.
That was kind of the, and I think that may just be a thing of the job, but
Okay. All right.
I could be wrong.
But
But
you're
that
2
was
for
sort
2.
of how I like. Yeah.
See, I got you, Tim. I got you. You're all good.
All right. And how would we like to divvy this up?
Do we have like 6, like,
Uh,
or like total
3,
6?
4, 5, 6, and this for
Oh,
this
there's
one.
like,
This is just for the one person. There's
Oh,
3
good Lord.
papers. It's a pick and choose. Actually, there's 4
Okay.
copies, 5 copies.
Identical copies?
Yes,
Could I just take one for the record?
absolutely. Here, I'll get
You
one.
get a letter of reference. You get a letter of reference. I get a letter of reference.
And I got an extra one. And you, I probably have them.
I gave the copy.
Oh, you gave it to Mary. Okay.
There are, I believe,
Great.
3 names on that one.
For
okay,
Fred.
so we each
And I
take
gave it
2.
back to you, but I have them scanned. I'm gonna scan them both and I can send them to you all
Okay,
electronically.
that sounds fine.
So kind of with the interview questions, are there going to be specific same questions that we ask of all the references?
No, I think what we did when we did Joe was we asked questions and then shared what the questions were you asked, because we're not going to be calling the same people, so.
Oh, agree, but I just want to make sure that whatever questions I ask, Lisa kind of gets the same
Keep it
ones.
professional, Peg.
Depends upon the week.
Basically,
Come on.
I mean, this is pretty standard, your relationship with the applicant, your impressions of the applicants. Yeah.
I'm going to play devil's advocate though, because I do it when I interview for jobs. Are you really going to give a recommendation of someone who thinks that you're a total buffoon?
You're not.
No.
I mean, no.
But
so
you can also, I get impressions off of the people who I'm talking with.
And how they respond.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Having checked some references on my own, I've also seen various levels of hot and cold on those. That sure, you can use me as a reference, and then not really wanting to commit when they're actually talking to the person versus the person of, oh yeah, I love that guy, I can't say enough good things about him or her.
So I have 30 seconds. Sure. What do you want to know? What's your one question?
You're
gonna know.
You're gonna know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
can
so.
tell you when we called Joe's, they gushed. It was nauseating. They gushed. We would take him back tomorrow.
Aww.
I didn't know that.
So, how do we want to divvy this up? I'll ask again.
Well, how many do we have for Fred? Because I mean, you have 6
There's
here,
3.
so it makes sense we each take 2, I guess,
Yep.
Let me check, I think there's 3.
and then 1 for
3?
Or we could
Okay.
just randomly choose 1 of each if you don't want to do all of
How
them.
many are there? 1, 2,
There's 6.
3.
Six.
Okay, so Do you want
Should we
me,
maybe
how
just
about
do
if I
3
do?
for each?
How about if I do Fred, and you do 3, and you do 3 at this? How's that?
I guess that's a pretty safe thing.
Do you want to do that?
Can
I'd
I,
Well-
rather do one of Fred's.
Okay. Oh, all
So
right.
that I can hear about Fred from somebody.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe we should just randomly choose 3 off of here.
All right, well,
So
why
that
don't
we're
you-
doing
how
equal
about-
numbers for each.
Thank you.
Peter. Thanks, Peter.
How about if you divvy them up for us, so we're not sitting here picking and choosing? Is
Yeah,
that
I'm just
fair?
gonna move the sheet under your paper and just put your finger down and that's the one that you got. Just saying.
Okay.
Let's take a number from 1 to 6.
Yeah,
I mean, it
1
doesn't
through
really
6, then we'll
matter to
poll
me.
the audience. So, whatever number Tim is
Okay.
thinking,
Yeah.
do the old Johnny Carson.
And then we can each do
4.
one for Fred.
The answer is 4.
Okay, pick a number.
3.
4.
Okay. So Peg. For Chris. And for Piper, I'll pick 5. Oh wait, no, we should do the fire chief, just because he worked with him in Leominster. All right.
So it's sort of.
So Peg, you have the first one on the list.
Okay.
Chris, you have Vern Holman,
Vern Holman. Okay.
and I'll take the fire chief.
Okay.
And then
Fred's.
Fred's. We'll just, you want to take 1, I'll take 2, and Peg can take 3 on the list for Fred?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll take number 1 on Fred.
Yep.
So wait a minute, if there's
What?
6 of them here.
And we're only gonna
Yeah.
do 3.
We're gonna do
Oh, okay,
3, so
three.
we
Three
do
and three.
equal
Yeah.
amounts for each person.
Okay.
I don't wanna,
Sounds good.
Loaded, heavy on one
On
side.
one side.
Absolutely.
and I
Okay.
think you'll get enough of an impression from,
Agreed.
All right.
all right.
So, shall we move on to the next thing on our agenda? Lisa, you had asked if I would put the small town capital grant deadline on the agenda.
Yep, I
What-
spoke with, Chris Lubach today, and, this has been floating around, and it had been sent over to planning, I think because one of the grants was Housing Choice.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually 2 grants. One is Housing Choice, one is the Housing Choice Small Town Capital. We missed the deadline for the first one. We have until Thursday to actually apply for this one. If we're going to apply for it, we need to decide tonight what project we want to apply for. There were some questions about whether our Complete Streets grant affected our eligibility. It does
Right.
not. I asked her today.
You
It
you
does
did.
not.
Okay.
There were some other questions, I think, about whether we would be unable to put a moratorium on, based on what I'm seeing, I think we just verify that right now we don't have a moratorium. You would sign to that effect. And then we're not on the hook for anything. We just, at this point, we're eligible because we do not have a moratorium and we have under 7,000 population. As far as projects go, if we're going to do this, things like coming into compliance on something or something with ADA accessibility does score a little higher on qualifying for the grant, but anything like the parking lot or any of our other capital projects, something on the capital plan would also be well received, was what
Okay.
she told me. So, do you ladies have any thoughts on, do we want to try to rush and get this through on Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, which project should we throw at them? My initial thought was the parking lot, but
I mean, and the only reason that I said, I mean, in my small tenure here, we've missed one. We were late by a half a day on another one, and then we're running up against this one. So, and forgive my ignorance, but whose responsibility is it to keep an eye on these, to make sure that if there's a response needed, somebody gets a response, and it's not the 3 of us playing ping pong email going, who's got this, who's got this? Well, I don't know. Well, oh crap, it's due. Sorry, we missed it. That's the frustrating part
Right.
for me. I mean, if it's a grant, if it's potential money to the town, we're not fulfilling our obligation to the folks of the town to make sure that we're on top of these. So who's whose job, I mean, and we don't need to discuss that here. The more important is, what do we want to do? So I guess I ask you, which one of the priorities? What's the more critical one? If you had to say, right now, give me a decision.
What do you think?
The answer is?
Well, my initial thought was, like I said, it was the parking lot.
Okay.
Because that has been put off and put off and put off. The other issue with that, though, is
And that would
that we
fall
would
into
have
this
to.
criteria?
It would, because it's a capital improvement.
Okay.
The issue is that we would get dinged a little bit because it wouldn't cover the entire cost, and we would have to ask for money at
Town meeting.
Town meeting,
Mhm.
and they would sort of count that a little bit against us. I think that people would go, oh, you got, X amount of dollars, and I think that they'd be amenable at town
Right.
meeting, but that would also, it would affect whether or
Right.
not we.
Would you even have, when would the grant become available?
This actually has to be done in fiscal year 19. So that is another thing that we need to know right away is, can we get this project primarily finished by next June? Could we get the bulk of that project finished? Other things that would count would be, we could also ask for something if we needed somebody to come in and plan something for us for a capital thing or those types of things. But I really couldn't come up with anything like that off the top of my head.
I mean, you've had personal injury with the parking lot.
You have.
That-
I think we could
That's
sell the
public
parking
safety.
lot.
And the thing is too, do you do the whole parking lot, or do you just do the front where people come in? And then maybe you go back to the town and say, we have $1 bazillion to do the front, it's done, compliant, wheelchair accessible, et cetera, we need $20 to do the back where the apparatus, well, in Peg's world, it's $20.
So the number on the current capital plan is 170 for, I'm assuming, the whole parking lot. I don't know.
Boy,
where that's split.
I'm not sure if that's the whole parking lot.
That sounds
Okay.
awfully low.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a number on the capital plan of 170.
Is it
I don't know
170
where-
here, 170 here, and here? Like 3 years in a row?
I think it was just 170. But there's not a lot of, you saw the capital plan, there's not a lot of detail. We could
Because I
find
really
out,
thought it was a
unless
lot
you
more
know.
than that.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know specifically to that point. I just wanted to comment real quick on what Peg was saying. If you take care of the front section where you have a lot of the people coming in and out, it's not just the pavement alone that's the issue. It's also, because I'm one of the people that fell, it's dealing with the ice issue coming off the roof from
that's
the melt.
right.
And then it freezes right in front of the door. And that's what happened to me. I was walking down the sidewalk, getting my keys out to come into the building,
Frick.
went right off the ice and smashed my knee. So.
Okay.
That's right.
I was laid up for a week, but it's multiple factors. It's not just the pavement, it's not just the sidewalk, it's a multiple between the building and the pavement.
I think it was actually more the ice or the water coming off.
What
the
it does
roof.
is it sheds off the
cools,
roof,
though.
because
And then-
you got the steel roof,
Right.
so it just slides right off. But however, just the way it's set up, it should be diverted, because the way it's set up right now is it lands in an area that's really shaded, and
It
it freezes
freezes.
right back over.
Okay.
So,
And I think it was the same spot for the other injury too.
yeah.
It was
Same
more the
day.
sidewalk,
But
right?
I know, like, from the parking lot itself, some of the areas in which I park are difficult because there's some
Sinkholes.
sinkholes, and
Yeah.
you go to get out, and you open the door, you're already at the pavement.
That
You
other
don't even
injured
step in
party
the car.
actually had the rear tire of her car fall into a sinkhole down to the axle.
Yeah.
That was a separate,
Okay.
Parking lot wins.
So like I said, I think we can sell this project.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I would rather
It's just
rush to get it in, and
maintenance.
if they say you only get a quarter of it, you get a quarter of it. But you know what? Something is better than nothing.
Is this competitive? I didn't even look at that closely.
It is, but it's also communities under 7,000 who are housing choice communities who have signed the community compact.
Okay.
So
Well, that sounds
that
pretty
pool
good.
is probably less than you
Yep.
think. The maximum of this grant is 100,000.
Mhm.
And can I make a quick comment too? If you're going to address the parking area, just from being the ADA coordinator for the town, you'd want to focus on the handicap
Yeah.
accessible parking spots to the handicap entrance itself first,
Mm.
and and then of course get as far as you can. But you'd want to kind of focus on that first, being an accessible entrance.
Also, the doors are not automatic. We don't
No,
have
they're not.
automatically opening doors.
But that would be in a capital budget for the facility itself. I mean, don't get me wrong, the parking lot's
Yeah.
part of the facility.
Yeah, but it
However,
has
you'd
to be
looking- Right.
one project.
At a time.
And I don't think we can,
Do the door in the
Combine.
I
parking
mean,
lot.
Right.
right now, from a building code standpoint, the doors are fine the way they are, because you have enough for the push-pull
Wow.
mechanism, which is fine. So that's not an issue. But in time, as things go on and progress, you'd want to look at getting a push button for the door to help individuals that
Right.
are coming in, especially with voting and, this building's heavily used by the public, so.
Right.
All right.
It's a loading dock too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so parking lot wins, so then who's going to write this?
do you want me to do it? I can work with Joe, and Chief Galvin has also done these, and see what I can put together.
All right, because it looks like, Chris, you need to submit it.
Yeah, I
Typically
actually
by
brought
the
the
chair
thing that
of
I
the
need you
board.
to sign. If we're approving this, because we need
Okay.
to, before I can even get into the grant thing, I need to upload
Okay.
this signature.
All right,
So is
do we need a
this-
motion?
Yes, you do.
Move to proceed with the applying for the small town capital grant.
Seconded, let's get it
Okay.
done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right down here under this?
There's
I
a,
think so.
yeah, there's a, I don't know, is the signature here or here? It doesn't matter, I'm gonna scan it and upload it
Looks
for
like
them.
it folded here or something, so I'm gonna sign it under here.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
As long as you're on it.
Yeah,
Do you need a stamp or anything, or are you good? I mean,
Good.
okay, all right.
all right. So I'll see what I can do. And I
Did
may,
I say all in favor?
What?
Oh, yeah.
What
All in
did you say?
favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We do have need for a very short executive session. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. 58 South Street, River Road West.
And you will or will not.
And we
return.
will
Not.
not be returning to open session except to adjourn.
Waisaki, aye.
Stone eye.
Key fi.